This video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and it is finally Friday. The stock market's closed today apparently, so I guess there won't be a great deal of change until about Monday. Today I wanted to talk mostly about Bitcoin and I want to take this approach of keeping it super simple. I see a bunch of charts right now that I think if we just kind of go extremely left curve on, we're probably going to be fine. So I want to share that with you. We'll look at a few charts and stuff and review the weekly closes since we can do that now. And then it will just be a case of going to enjoy the weekend, touch grass, relax, at least wait for a daily close, all of that good stuff. So first of all, June of this year was insane for the Bitcoin treasury updates. We had over 250 announcements, 68k Bitcoin was purchased and added to these Bitcoin treasuries. So we had 21 new treasuries, 47 future treasuries planning to buy billions worth of Bitcoin. We had 42 companies increase their total holdings. We had 43 plan to buy more with billions raised already. And we had 22 additional treasury related disclosures. It reminds me of that old adage, right? Gradually, then suddenly. It feels a lot to me like we may be transitioning into the suddenly phase here. And we've even seen gold miners now start to add Bitcoin to their treasury. So pretty wild. I love to see this stuff, honestly. As I said at the start, keeping it super simple. This is the IBIT ETF. Closed on the weekends, of course, and thus I actually think this thing trades a bit cleaner. So far, looking to break out from a bull flag, the measured move target would be right up around 150k for Bitcoin. And the main reason I wanted to kick things off is because a lot of people have been telling me the indicator works extremely well on this, and I haven't actually checked yet, so we're going to check this live now. Not looking too bad, but to be honest, I don't think it's any better than the Bitcoin one either at this current moment in time. Again, keeping it super simple. Bitcoin growth of $100. The red one is the current cycle. We are getting dangerously close to where we would normally expect to see a top for Bitcoin. Now, of course, the tops can move around a little bit. It could be earlier, it could be later. We just don't know yet. But one thing that's important in trading is to have an idea and stick with it until the market proves otherwise. And so that's what I think we should do here. I think we should acknowledge that there's a good probability that the top is not too far away from us. To reach 200k Bitcoin, we only need to average about 0.39% gain per day to get us up to that 200k target by the end of this year. So I know a lot of people have trouble imagining Bitcoin's going to do a double from the current levels, but again, you know, Bitcoin is more than capable of doing a 10 or 15% candle. And I think this is a nice way to visualize it, okay? We really don't have to cover a great deal of ground. We just have to consistently grind higher and we will still reach that 200k milestone. And it would probably look something akin to this, right? Would it be insane? I don't think so personally. A lot of investors have this problem with saying this time is different, and I largely agree with that, okay? But sometimes things are slightly different. I think where people get confused is this time is different kind of implies that markets and human psychology is going to change. And therefore, I think people get quite dogmatic. They kind of stick with this idea that nothing is ever different. But objectively speaking, things can be different as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean there won't be booms and busts. It doesn't necessarily mean that things will be extremely different. But just as an example, my favorite example is a lot of people said we couldn't possibly make an all-time high before the halving. And then the next thing you know, that's exactly what the market did. Something else that is undeniably different this time around is the Bitcoin liveliness. This is a metric that tracks whether or not investors are holding or spending, and this metric continues to trend down. This time around, most people are not interested in taking profit here. This time around, most people don't want to sell, and this time around, the liveliness is decreasing. Likely speaks to a bunch of these treasuries that we were talking about earlier, buying and holding this stuff forever, or at least until they are forced to liquidate. Whether or not that actually occurs is, of course, to be determined, but for now at least, not many of the big players here are considering taking profit just yet. Something we've been touching on pretty much all week on this channel is how as we approach that top, as we get later and later into the cycle, right, as we start to climb towards that area on the chart where historically Bitcoin has looked to put in a major top, we would expect to see sentiment become more and more one-sided, more and more greedy, more and more euphoric, more and more complacent. We've been talking about how it's totally normal and to be expected that as we get there, towards that top, we'll see people move the goalposts, both in terms of time, i.e. this cycle will run for longer, and both in terms of price, i.e. my target was 300k and now it's, I don't know, 6, 7, 800k, whatever. And I have been making the case that it's extremely important to try to be as vigilant as you possibly can and gauge that sentiment, because the more that starts to happen, the more one-sided the trade becomes, and the more one-sided it becomes, the more it pays to take the other side of that trade. Now, just as an example here, obviously this account is a permabull, extreme bull poster, there's somewhat of an element of trolling in a lot of his posts, but this does illustrate my point well, okay? He says he has not seen one analyst suggesting that we may never have another bear market ever again. Are you prepared for this scenario? Again, I'm pretty sure there's an element of joking about this, but it's also true that the later we get in this cycle, the more you are going to see people entertain the idea that there won't be another bear market, or that the 4-year cycle is dead. I've even been seeing this showing up in my comment section recently. A lot of people have been saying things like the 4-year cycle's done with, and that happens towards every major top. Like I said, the more the tape turns green, the more greedy people get, the more the sentiment will swing to become one-sided. And it sounds kind of reasonable when you read it out loud, like the market has trained the OGs to sell Bitcoin when the price runs up and buy back in a bear market decline. It's already happened 3 times before, so why wouldn't it happen again? But like I said, it's kind of a weird one, right? It sounds okay when you read it out, sounds like it could be plausible, but humans are humans. They will experience booms and busts. Even the institutions, I think a lot of people mistake for being some kind of savants and ultra intellect. And the reality is they're just greedy, dumb humans as well. Not to mention, if you are a cycle trader like me, then you have seen enough cycles to be pretty sure that these cycles are not just going to cease to exist. If it does, it'd be the first time I've ever seen it. I don't think it's likely at all. I think there's always going to be cycle lows show up on the chart. And to illustrate this point further, here's a recent post that says, look, Bitcoin cycles are dead. Now, again, let's be really clear. I'm not trying to pick on any of these individual accounts. That's not what this is about. It's not personal, it's business as always. But the business I am in is to try to gauge sentiment, particularly when it swings one-sided, particularly when it has all the familiar characteristics and hallmarks of a crowded herd mentality. I do not want to be on the same side as a crowded, one-sided herd mentality. And so I expect to see this kind of stuff proliferate, and you should expect me to continue to point at it until eventually I say something along the lines of, that's it, I can't possibly continue to be long anymore. I have to take the opposite side of this trade. My longtime followers have seen me do this dozens of times now. You saw me do it at the top of the Dixie. You saw me do it in here before this big breakout when everyone was calling for a much lower Dixie. You've seen me do it with oil practically in every single counter trend bounce since the top, right? Every single one of these apparent breakout attempts, the sentiment did not match, and I kept taking the opposite side of that trade. There's lots and lots of examples, but getting this Bitcoin one correct is the one I care the most about. And so again, it's not personal, it's just pointing at stuff like this, right? No more bear markets, we're just going to keep grinding up forever. No more 4-year cycle low, just a straight path to multiple millions a coin. This is exactly the type of sentiment, ideas, moving the goalpost that is exactly expected to proliferate as we approach the end of this 4-year cycle. So when we say this time is never different, this is exactly what we're talking about, right? What we can count on to never be different is humans to always move the goalpost, become one-sided, become greedy and complacent. But that's not the same as saying, well, this time is never different. Well, actually it is in terms of things like the all-time high pre-halving, that kind of thing. And to prove this time is never different when it comes to human psychology, here's an example of the exact same idea, okay? Back in 2021. October of 2021, right as we're approaching the final marginal higher high at 69k before the rollover in the bear market, these ideas started to proliferate. Again, it's nothing personal against this account. There's hundreds of people that do the exact same thing, post it on Twitter, 4-year cycle's dead. And really it doesn't matter because it's not our job to judge this, it's our job to observe it, okay? So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to observe that as we start to approach the end of the 4-year cycle bull phase, as I start to look for areas to take profit into, I want this confirmed with sentiment, and I want this confirmed with this kind of moving the goalpost type ideology. Last but not least, before we get into some charts, Bitcoin dominance will stop going up as soon as people stop calling the top on it. This is absolutely true. It's not just true of Bitcoin dominance, it's true of any market, okay? When people are permanently cheering on for a market to reverse, you can guarantee one thing, and that is that it will not reverse until people finally quit on the idea of it reversing. It works both going up and going down. If you look at Bitcoin in its bear market lows, every bear market low that I have seen for Bitcoin has had people cheering on one final dip to a lower low. At 3K, they were cheering on one final dip to 1.5K. At 15K, they were cheering on one final lower low to 12 to 14K. And of course, the market doesn't give it to them. And it's the same thing with this Bitcoin dominance. All the while people are permanently cheering on this thing to top and roll over, you can guarantee it's going to keep going higher. Once people eventually give up on that idea en masse, then we will finally see this thing have a chance at spilling to the downside. So again, using the same principles that I've been talking about for Bitcoin, right? Observing the crowd, observing the sentiment, trying to get your best read possible on the herd mentality, you can do that with this as well. Okay, if you are cheering on alt season, if you're cheering on a breakdown in Bitcoin dominance, look around you. When you can see no man left cheering on this thing reversing, then you can probably start to say to yourself, okay, now I'm confident it's time to break down. But all the while there's a crowd here cheering for this thing to reverse, you could probably rest assured that this thing is going to continue higher for a while longer. So moving into the charts, what a weekly close for the S&P and the stock market in general, right? Look at this. Super, super, super bullish. And we know that this thing's going to grind higher for a little longer maybe, and then pull back into a daily cycle low. So far, so good there. Bitcoin, again, a lot of people are cheering on this breakout, and maybe this is breakout retest and about to be resumption. But again, it kind of fits with what I've been saying all week, in that we need, number one, to see more candles before we can actually start to scratch some of these ideas off. And number two, pretty much anything other than blasting off in a straight line from here, from a cycle perspective at least, would indicate that we probably need to waste some more time before we can move higher. Something else I wanted to point out here is notice where we are at the moment, right? Back testing the prior all-time high, right into that exact level of the prior all-time high. And the sentiment is terrible. Did anyone else observe this? People are not bull posting Bitcoin en masse. Most people seem really, really frustrated. The sentiment's kind of weird, given that we're literally sat right at all-time highs. Let me know in the comments if you experienced that as well. I know there's a bit of subjectivity depending on your echo chamber and your algorithms, but as far as I can tell, most people seem kind of annoyed. They seem kind of disappointed in this cycle. I saw plenty of comments this week along the lines of this is the worst cycle ever, or this is a Bitcoin bull run from Temu, and which is quite funny, I'll give you that. But I mean, realistically, this market is up over 600%, or around 10 times what the S&P 500 is up in the past couple of years. I mean, how much more performance do you really want, right? If you can average 600% every 2 to 3 years, you'll be a millionaire in no time. So I don't know, and that's even if you start with like a couple $100 or $1,000, right? Like the compound interest of this kind of return makes it practically impossible not to be filthy rich. And I'm just not really sure why everywhere I look, all I see is, oh, this is a bull market from Temu, which again is funny to me. It's funny. That's a funny comment, but but this is not a bull run from Temu, right? This is 600% in 2.5 years. So I'm not sure exactly what you wanted. I think it's also worth noting that if we do get a matching leg here, like is expected, if we do get this repeat to the upside, we could be at 150k in no time, and then that will be a 10x in under 3 years. Again, how much more can you really ask for? So I say so far so good. Happy days, long and strong. Keep staying on the right side of the trade. Keep taking it one day at a time. All that stuff that I parrot every single day and have been parroting every single day since I had the channel still applies. Gold, cycle low, looks a bit lackluster, doesn't it? We'll see. Silver, I wanted to see push a little harder, but maybe that's coming into Monday or Tuesday. One final thing I wanted to do before I love you and leave you is I think it's time to redraw this trend line. I think maybe we can have one here, okay? And I also think we can have a more short-term one in here just to alert us to any kind of breakout or repair that's being attempted in the 10-year. I think also by now we could move this to here, and that will let us know if a true breakdown is on its way. I know we're getting a little pop-up. I see all over Twitter, people like to zoom in. They pull like a 15-minute chart up, and they do this, right? This is what they do. They zoom in on this candle here and they go, oh no, yields is the end of the world. Oh, Trump's in trouble. Oh, no rate cut ever again, right? They do this. But just remember, if you actually are not a slave to the tape, if you're not an engagement farmer on the internet, then is this something to get excited about? I would say not just yet, okay? So we're still kind of attempting to tell that to the bond market. Obviously, markets take time. You have to give it plenty of space to do what it's going to do. But overall, the trend is still down at this moment in time, at least in the short term. So long as we can continue to grind, break down, then we can talk about telling that to the bond market, rate cuts, all of that good stuff. But obviously that could take a little while. So just give this thing the space to breathe. Unless it breaks out of this one from back here, I really don't think there's anything to be concerned about. I feel totally comfortable not going back to the drawing board or putting alternative scenarios on the table unless we decisively break out of this top resistance line. And so that's pretty much it, right? Have a fantastic weekend. I love you all. Deep dive tomorrow, level 3 members vid tomorrow. We got plenty of profit in the level 3 members section because of those crypto stocks. So we'll go over that in deep dive fashion. And other than that, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Touch grass, relax, at least wait for a daily close. Keep your marbles intact, appreciate the cycle lows. Manage your risks, set stocks, let time just do the rest. Meanwhile, look forward to another Camel Finance episode 2.